Hello, thanks for tuning in. My name is Yap. So yes, continuing from my series on stripping it right back, the series of streams I done called Stripping It Right Back. If you've been following me or trying to follow me, then fabulous. So yes, I get many questions about the systemic lens I'm trying to relay to people. And one of the questions is, how does it work in a practical way? Okay, what is its purpose? How can we use it in a praxis way as a species? Okay. So yes, I will explain that. Let's roll with the idea of stabilizing the human mind. How do we bring stability to the human mind? Because, we're a world at the moment and we're out of balance with our own nature, and that's instability. And if we look back along our historical path, we have been plagued with instability. The mind has been unstable on many, many pages of our human journey. Nazism was an instability of mind. Okay, church and God and sinner was an instability of human mind. The bastardization of language, the bastardization of children, and so on was an instability of the human mind, the human way. So how do we bring stability to the human mind? Well, that's one of the things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to stabilize the human mind. Okay, I'm trying to stabilize the human mind. So, for example, if you want to learn Kung Fu, okay, and you enter a room and meet with a Kung Fu master, okay? That Kung Fu master is going to stabilize your mind around body, fluency, balance, strength, and so on, okay? So it'll bring, over time, after about 10 years, if you practice every day, you'll bring a certain stability to mind and body, and so on, and so you learn to master the field of Kung Fu. The same applies to learning music. The same applies to learning everything. It's all about stabilizing your mind around what you are entering, and so on. So if you can speak English, then you're stabilized around the English structures of language, and so on. And if you understand science, say chemistry, then you're stabilized around all the variables, the axioms that relate chemistry to us, and so on. If you're an astronaut, then you're stabilized around how to get to space, how to survive in space, and so on. Your body becomes stabilized by training it, and so on. So yes, it's all about stabilizing the human mind. How do we stabilize the human mind? Well, we have to give agency to the human mind so we can stabilize it, and that's what my work is about. So the importance of my work, is, first of all, if we stabilize the human mind and understand it as a systemic lens, it allows us to enter the metaphysical realms, okay? It allows us to enter the metaphysical garden, and that is where we have to go if we want to find God. I was already talking about that throughout Stripping It Right Back. But I just want to talk about it now in relation to this world. How do we introduce my system, in a practical way, and how will it benefit all of us? Well, like I said, if you consider our historical page, it's filled with oppression, okay? It's filled with slavery, it's filled with racism, sexism, okay? It's filled with war, it's filled with nationalism and classisms, okay? It's filled with the caste system. And that is all built on instability, okay? The mind is not lined up in the correct manner. So throughout my streams, I was relaying, what I call utility modes, utility mechanisms of the mind, modes of the mind, and, modes like evaluation and navigation and categorization and adding and so on, and unification. So when these modes are not employed in the correct manner, okay, it leads to instability, okay? That's why it's really important that we understand and give agency to what I am trying to relay. So, for example, you take any field of oppression. Let's just take Nazism because it's familiar to most people. The Nazis could evaluate. They could evaluate wealth, okay? They could evaluate their position in the Nazi army. They could evaluate where the Jew was and the German was, okay? But they were not evaluating correctly. They were able to add up their pennies. They were able to add up 6 million Jews dead and so on, okay, the genocide, okay? So they were adding up bullets, they were adding up countries, they were adding up tanks, they were able to add up. So the mode of adding was in play, as was the mode of evaluation, okay? As was, they were navigating their minds around reality, they were navigating their minds around territory and control and Jews and Germans and the Aryan race and so on. So my point being is, all of the modes were in play, okay? But they did not understand them, they did not know how to bring balance to them, hence the corruption and abomination of our beautiful sacredness that it was. So yes, if we do not bring stability to the mind, then we will remain in a state of instability. Goes without saying. So I am trying to stabilize the human mind. Now, we all have a semblance of stability in our lives. For example, on this day, there are many depressed people on our planet, but they can still get on with life and their daily chores and so on, bringing up their families and going to their workplace. The mind is in an unstable place because it's depressed. There's a certain amount of instability in it, but they can still function. They can still stabilize their mind around certain variables that allow them to function and function and get through their day and so on. So the mind can be stabilized around family, and it can be stabilized around good food. It can be stabilized around, getting to the airport and going on holidays. There's a certain stability that allows us to function every day in the world. And like I said, we all use to function, we have to evaluate. We have to add on things to our day. We have to categorize. We categorize the food we're going to eat, okay? We can categorize that as poison so we don't eat it. We evaluate it, categorize it, navigate our minds by it, and realize, deduce that it's poison, so we navigate away from it. So we can find certain stabilities in our minds and hearts with the reality we live in, okay? But we are still an unstable lot, okay? We are still, when it comes to the bigger questions, when it comes to our understanding our place in this universe, when it comes to understanding our total perspective in regards to what we are and what we mean to each other and what our purpose is and what our journey is about, okay? We are well out of kilter. Our minds and hearts are well out of kilter with that perspective, okay? Because we haven't utilized, we haven't learned to bring stability to our minds in the correct manner. And so, like I said, so if I truly believe that, if you can evaluate properly, okay, if you understand consistency, 1 + 1 = 2, evaluate that, that has consistency. 1 + 1 = 7, evaluate that, it's inconsistent and so on. So it doesn't unify. 1 + 1 = 2 unifies and so on. So when you employ the modes in the correct manner, okay, they allow the mind to work in a completely stabilized way. Okay, once you can evaluate correctly, once you categorize, like if you want to evaluate what a human being is, you have to categorize chemistry and biology, spirit, you have to categorize the emotional field that we're all fused by and so on, categorize ego, categorize God, categorize sovereignty, categorize law, and so on. That's how you categorize a human being. If you want to evaluate a human being based on the color of their skin or based on the fact that they believe in a different religious text and so on, then you are not categorizing the human being in the correct fashion, okay? You're just reacting to a surface, you're reacting to appearances, and appearances are not what things are. For example, when you eat an apple, you see an apple, but an apple is actually a bed of molecules fusing, if you will, to give us the idea of an apple. My point being is the noun apple. When we see an apple, but that's just the appearance. That's not actually what the apple is, okay? You can stabilize your mind around that position. So the same thing with a human being. How do I appear to you? I have hands flying about and mouth and eyes and hair and and I have a body, okay? And you can see a human being, but this body is made up of trillions of bacteria and trillions of cells and so on, okay? They break down to a metaphysical realm, they break down to a quantum pond, if you will, okay? And we do not understand all the interplays going on at that level, okay? So all we understand of the person is what we see in relation to appearances, how we appear to each other. But that is not the correct way to categorize a person. Like I said, if you want to categorize a person, you have to extend and expand into the person, 2 more modes of the mind, and you have to categorize them, like I said, and catalog them and add up what they are with efficiency, with consistency, and so on. And that gives you the full scope and scale of what a human being is, and so on. So anyway, my point is, once you stabilize the mind around the modes I have relayed, you will stabilize your mind around a systemic lens. And all knowledge is arrived at by systemizing our positions in the world. All knowledge is, if you have an understanding of something like, say, Kung Fu, it's because you've systemized your mind around a geometry of plays that allow us to use Kung Fu, to utilize Kung Fu as an art form, and so on. So yes, so you bring stability to things, okay? Anyway, so yes, it's all about stabilizing the mind, and whether you want to understand music or art or Kung Fu or mathematics or science or getting to space, it's all about mental stability. So yes, I hope that makes sense. Like I said, if we're going to move forward out of this dark age, which is an age of instability, which is an age of imbalance, okay, we have to understand that the reason we are in a state of imbalance is because the mind itself is not functioning at an optimum. Okay, so that's how my work relates in a practical way. And like I said, when you fully understand the system, then you start to see the metaphysical field, which is the garden of God, or what God might be, and so on. You start to see that in a different light. So yes, anyway, that's another story. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them, and I'll endeavour to ask them to the best of my ability. So yes, peace and love and logic, and thanks for tuning in again.